12 top specialists hovered around the little boy's bed, each one defeated. Machines kept beeping, oxygen dropping, and a father stood there, hands shaking, eyes begging for a miracle that wasn't coming. The doctors whispered, "We've tried everything. There's nothing left." But in the corner of that cold hospital room stood a man no one noticed, the old janitor, clutching his mop, watching the child struggle. His voice trembled as he finally stepped forward and whispered, "I know what's wrong, but nobody ever listens to me." And in that moment, everything changed. 8-year-old Tommy lay in the ICU, so still he almost looked like a porcelain doll. His tiny chest rose in weak, uneven breaths while wires, tubes, and glowing monitors surrounded him like a battlefield. Nurses rushed in and out. Machines beeped warnings no one could stop. Every minute felt like one step closer to losing him. 12 of the country's top specialists had already examined him. Cardiologists, neurologists, toxicologists, even rare disease experts. But every test came back clean, every scan normal. "It makes no sense," the chief doctor muttered for the 10th time. "His body is shutting down, but we don't know why." On the far end of the hallway stood Vinnie Marconi, Tommy's father, a man feared by half the city, reduced to trembling hands and red eyes. His reputation meant nothing here. Money couldn't buy answers. Power couldn't force a cure. He held Tommy's small backpack against his chest, rocking slightly as if trying to calm a storm inside him. Doctors whispered nervously around him. Everyone knew who Vinny was. Everyone felt the pressure. "If that kid dies," one nurse whispered, "this hospital won't survive the aftermath." The tension was suffocating. Mistakes were made, orders clashed, and panic grew like wildfire. But in the midst of all the chaos, someone watched quietly empty the corner of the ICU corridor. Leaning on his old mop stood Mr. Callahan, the hospital janitor. 70 years old, hunched, slow, forgotten by everyone. For hours he had been observing the doctors, listening to the machines, watching Tommy's condition change in ways no one noticed. His eyes weren't confused like the specialists. They were focused, knowing, almost certain, but he remained silent. Because in this hospital, no one listened to the janitor. Not yet. Sam Callahan had been sweeping hospital hallways for nearly 25 years, but no one ever bothered to ask why a man who spoke like a professor, moved like a surgeon, and observed like a scientist spent his days pushing AM OP.to most. He was simply the janitor. Old, quiet, replaceable, but behind those tired eyes lived a mind sharper than most of the residents racing around the ICU. The truth about Sam, a life buried by the world decades ago, Sam had been on track to become one of the top pediatric specialists in the country. He had graduated at the top of his class, earned scholarships, and completed research that once caught the attention of some of the best medical institutions. But every step he took, every application he filed, every interview he attended, hit the same invisible wall. His resume was perfect, his scores were perfect, his recommendations were perfect, but he wasn't. Not to a system that didn't want a black man rising too quickly. Positions mysteriously went to someone else. Interviews ended early. Supervisors told him he was not a good cultural fit. When he finally confronted one of his mentors, the man sighed and whispered, "Sam, they'll never let you get where you want to go. I'm sorry, but this is the way things are." And just like that, the system erased him. Not because he wasn't brilliant, but because brilliance didn't matter when your skin color made people uncomfortable. Sam took whatever job he could find. He chose the hospital because at least here, he could still be near the sick, near the suffering, near the hope he once dreamed of giving the world, the ICU residents. Arrogance in white coats, while the specialists panicked over Tommy's unexplained condition. The younger residents stood in clusters, whispering loud enough for Sam to hear. Why's the janitor standing around like he knows something? Probably just wants attention. Man doesn't even have a degree. Look at him, acting like he belongs with the doctors. They laughed, nudged each other, and carried on in their minds. Sam wasn't a person, just background noise. But Sam wasn't listening to them. He was watching Tommy. The boy's calves had faint redness. His lips were cracked. His temperature spike came in waves, not dips. His eyes showed a certain kind of inflammation Sam had only seen twice in his life, and when he noticed a tiny peeling near Tommy's fingers, his breath caught. He knew instantly. This wasn't a mystery. This wasn't impossible. It was Kawasaki disease, a rare and dangerous condition that mimics dozens of other illnesses but follows a very specific progression. Most doctors go their entire careers without seeing it. But Sam had studied it extensively during his residency years, and Tommy had every major sign that if untreated, it could cause deadly heart aneurysms. But if caught early, it was almost entirely curable. Tommy wasn't dying. Tommy just needed someone who could recognize the pattern. Sam stepped back from the glass window of the ICU, his heart pounding. He has to tell someone. This was a child's life. Even if no one respected him, he had to try. Sam speaks up, and the hospital shows its true face. Sam walked toward the cluster of residents first, speaking with urgency. "Excuse me," he said, voice trembling but steady. "I believe the boy might have Kawasaki disease." The residents froze, then smirked. "You believe? A janitor diagnosing rare pediatric conditions? That's new. You need to stay in your lane, old man." Sam swallowed hard. He had been insulted before, many times, but never when a child's life hung in the balance. "I spent years studying medicine," he explained gently. "I recognize the symptoms. The peeling skin, the waves of fever." The one resident raised a hand sharply. "Stop. You're not a doctor. You don't get to make medical suggestions." Another added, "You can't just walk up and pretend your mop gives you superpowers." Their laughter echoed through the corridor. Sam felt the old familiar sting. Humiliation, discrimination, degradation, but he forced himself to push through it. "This isn't about me," he said. "This is about the boy. Please, just run an echo test. If it's Kawasaki." But before he could finish, the chief resident stepped forward and snapped. "That's enough. You're disrupting the medical team." He signaled to security. The final blow, thrown out like trash. A security guard approached and placed a hand on Sam's shoulder. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the ICU area." Sam's heart dropped. "No, please. You don't understand. He doesn't have much time. Just test him. One test. That's all I'm asking." The guard tightened his grip. "Let's go." Doctors turned their backs. Residents chuckled. Nurses pretended not to hear. Sam was escorted down the hallway like a criminal, like a nuisance, like a man whose life meant nothing. As he reached the stairwell, he looked back one last time, toward the room where Tommy lay gasping for air, and whispered to himself, "I could have saved him if they had just listened." He wasn't angry, he wasn't bitter, he was heartbroken, because he knew exactly what would happen if no one acted soon. Tommy's heart could fail. His arteries could rupture. His life could slip away, all because the world had decided Sam was invisible. But fate wasn't done with Sam yet. Not by a long shot. The moment he was thrown out was the moment destiny began to turn. The conference room on the third floor of St. Augustine's Hospital buzzed with tension. 12 specialists gathered around a long glass table, each exhausted, frustrated, and embarrassed by their inability to diagnose Tommy Marconi. The overhead lights flickered faintly, matching the unease in the room. Charts lay scattered across the table, blood results, scans, notes, none of them offering the answers the hospital was desperate to find. The chief cardiologist rubbed his forehead and sighed. The door slammed open so hard the walls shook. Vinnie Marconi walked in. But he wasn't alone. Beside him stood Sam Callahan, the janitor, with his cap in his hand and a fire in his eyes that hadn't been seen in decades. The moment the room froze, every doctor went silent. A mafia boss barging into a meeting was not part of anyone's medical training. The chief surgeon opened his mouth to speak, but Vinnie raised a hand sharply. "No one talks," he growled. "Not yet." He stepped aside and pointed at Sam like he was introducing the most important man in the building. "This man," Vinnie said, voice echoing, "knows what's wrong with my boy." Snickers rose from a few residents. A couple specialists exchanged glances. The hospital administrator blinked in disbelief. One doctor finally dared to whisper, "The janitor?" Vinnie's head whipped toward him, eyes blazing. "You got a problem with his job?" or with the fact that he's the only one who seems to know what the hell he's doing? The room went dead again. Sam swallowed, stepping forward. His hands trembled at first, but when he began speaking, his voice steadied like a surgeon preparing for an incision. Tommy has Kawasaki disease. A ripple of confusion crossed the specialist's faces. Then skepticism. That's impossible, one muttered. It's extremely rare. Symptoms don't line up. We ran tests. Sam raised a hand gently. You ran the wrong ones. That silenced them more effectively than Vinny could have. Sam takes control. Sam walked to the table and slowly spread out the medical charts, one by one, just as he'd seen residents do for decades. His movements were precise, confident, practiced that he pointed to the fever chart, wave pattern fever. Classic for Kawasaki. He pointed to Tommy's lips, cracked mucous membranes. Another hallmark. He tapped the photo of Tommy's hands, peeling skin at the fingertips. Seen in the second phase. He flipped through the vitals. Persistent inflammation with no bacterial or viral confirmation. That's textbook Kawasaki. The room was silent. The chief pediatrician leaned forward. How do you know all this? Sam didn't hesitate. I studied pediatric inflammatory diseases for 8 years. I wrote research papers on atypical Kawasaki presentations. I trained under Dr. Howard Langston in Boston, before the system decided men like me weren't meant for white coats. A quiet hush fell across the room. Shock rippled across the faces around him. One young resident, the same one who mocked Sam earlier, spoke louder than he meant to. I thought you were just the janitor. Sam answered softly, yes. That's what they reduced me to. Vinny stepped forward, voice low and deadly. And his diagnosis better be taken damn seriously. Because if he's right and any of you ignored him, they'll be hell to pay. But Vinny didn't need to threaten anymore, because the specialists themselves were now looking at Sam not as a janitor, but as a colleague they'd underestimated. The questioning, Sam versus 12 experts, the chief cardiologist adjusted his glasses. All right, Mr. Callahan, if you believe it's Kawasaki, answer a question. He leaned in. What is the risk percentage of coronary aneurysm in untreated cases? Sam answered without blinking, 25%. Higher if symptoms last more than 10 days. The cardiologist nodded slowly, impressed that a second doctor jumped in. And what's the most effective immediate treatment? IV infusion, 2 grams per kilogram. Administered slowly over 10 to 12 hours. Combine with high-dose aspirin initially, then taper. A third doctor stepped forward. What atypical sign convinced you most? The boy's conjunctival injection without exudate, Sam said instantly. It's subtle. Most miss it. The room fell completely silent. Every answer was flawless, precise, at doctor level, at world class. The specialists looked at one another with growing disbelief. The man they mocked, the man they overlooked, the man they dismissed as invisible was outclassing them all. The chief surgeon finally exhaled hard and looked at the team. Order an echocardiogram, he said. Now, the echo test. Truth revealed minutes later. They gathered in the dimly lit echo room. The machine hummed softly as the technician moved the probe over Tommy's small chest. Vinny stood behind the glass, hands shaking again, but this time from hope. Sam stood beside him, eyes fixed on the monitor. As the grainy image sharpened, a murmur spread through the room. There was the left coronary artery, slightly dilated. Exactly as Sam predicted. The cardiologist whispered, almost in awe, he's right. Another specialist leaned forward. It is Kawasaki. The chief pediatrician placed a hand over his mouth. How do we miss this? The hospital administrator looked pale. We have to act immediately. In that instant, Sam didn't look like a janitor. He looked exactly like the doctor he should have become. Vinny placed a hand on Sam's shoulder, firm, grateful, emotional in a way he rarely allowed himself to be. You saved him, Vinny whispered. You damn near saved him before anyone else even tried. Sam didn't speak. He just stared at Tommy through the glass, at a child he had been ready to fight the world for. Treatment begins. Guided by the janitor within minutes, nurses brought IVIG into the ICU. Doctors prepare the lines. Monitors were checked. Every specialist moved with urgency and precision. But something unusual happened. They looked to Sam. for guidance, for confirmation, for leadership. Is this the correct dosage? Should we monitor his vitals every 15 minutes or 10? Any risks we should anticipate? And Sam answered each question with calm authority. The dosage is correct. Vitals every 10. They may fluctuate. Watch for allergic reactions, though rare. Even the chief cardiologist nodded respectfully. For the first time in his life, Sam wasn't invisible, that he was essential. The infusion began. The medicine that Tommy's body had desperately needed for days finally entered his bloodstream. His fever monitor beeps softened. His breathing steadied. His skin's flush slowly eased. Vinny gripped the rail of the bed and whispered, "Come on, kid, come back to me." Sam stood at the foot of the bed, hands clasped, eyes glistening, like a guardian who refused to let fate win. Hours passed, Tommy's heart rate stabilized. His fever broke. The redness faded. By dawn, he opened his eyes weakly and breathed a clearer breath. The specialists exchanged stunned looks. They had just witnessed a miracle, delivered not by a prestigious surgeon or a famous doctor, but by the janitor they once shoved aside. Respect earned, justice delivered. As they stepped out of the ICU room, the chief pediatrician approached Sam with visible humility. "Mr. Callahan," he said, voice thick with guilt, "if you had been allowed to practice medicine, I have no doubt you'd be one of the best in the world." Another doctor stepped forward. "We owe you an apology. All of us." Sam shook his head softly. "This isn't about me. It's about the boy. He's going to live." But Vinny stepped forward, voice low and powerful. "No, Sam. This is about you." He looked at every doctor in the room. "You ignored him because of what he wore, because of the job he had, because of the color of his skin." Not a single doctor dared argue. "And because of that," Vinny continued, "my boy almost died." He turned to Sam, a man who had been broken by a cruel system, yet still carried a healer's heart. "But you saw what none of them did. You saved my son, and now the whole damn world is going to know your name." Sam swallowed hard. Overwhelmed, he had spent decades sweeping floors while dreaming of saving lives. Tonight, he finally did, and no one could take that from him ever again. In that moment, in that small ICU hallway filled with trembling doctors and one exhausted janitor, justice finally took a breath. And hope roared back to life. For a few precious hours, Tommy stabilized. Machines quieted, nurses breathed easier, and Vinny finally allowed his shoulders to drop. But hope is fragile, especially in an ICU. Just before dawn, alarms exploded across the room. Tommy's heart rate plummeted. His breathing turned shallow, rapid. Monitors blared warning after warning. The doctors rushed in, panic rising again. "He's going into shock. Blood pressure crashing. Push fluids. Prepare for emergency intubation." Vinny froze, terror hollowing his chest. No. Tommy, stay with me." But Sam stepped forward, and something changed. He didn't look like a janitor anymore. He looked like what he should have been all along, a senior physician stepping into command. "Stop," Sam ordered firmly. "Don't intubate yet. This is IVIG reaction shock. He needs controlled fluids, slowly, and a second dose of aspirin, not rapid ventilation." The room paused as if gravity shifted. The specialist stared at him, wide-eyed, waiting, and then, one by one, they nodded, trusting him completely. Orders flew. Nurses moved fast. Sam guided every step, calm but urgent. "Adjust the drip. Lower it. Watch his coronaries. Look at the dilation. He's reacting, but it's reversible. Stay on your timing. Count with me. 1 to now." It was a dance, precision, experience, intuition, the kind of mastery only a true healer could possess. Minutes felt like hours. Vinny stood beside Tommy, gripping his small hand, whispering broken prayers. Then, Tommy's heart rate lifted a little more, and more, until it steadied. His breathing smoothed, his color returned. The crisis passed. Sam exhaled shakily, tears finally spilling down his cheeks. He's coming back. He's really coming back. Moments later, Tommy's eyelids fluttered. He blinked weakly, staring up at his father. "Dad," he whispered. Vinny collapsed onto the bed, sobbing into his son's hair. "You scared the hell out of me. Kid, don't ever do that again." Nurses wiped tears. Even the specialists turned away, overwhelmed, and Sam, standing quietly at the foot of the bed, felt something inside him heal too. For decades, the world had buried him, but today a little boy lived because he refused to stay silent. The truth comes out, and the world finally sees Sam word spread across the hospital like wildfire. By noon, every department knew what had happened. The janitor who saved the Marconi boy. The man who diagnosed what 12 specialists missed. The man who led a near-fatal intervention with the confidence of a chief physician. The board called an emergency meeting. The administrators were pale, humbled, and when they finally spoke to Sam, their voices trembled. "Mr. Callahan, we owe you the deepest apology, and an opportunity we should have given you years ago." They offered him an official role as a medical consultant, a position with authority, respect, and a platform to guide pediatric diagnostics across the entire hospital. That Sam's eyes filled again. "Thank you, but I'd like to keep my janitor job too," he said softly. "It reminds me of where I came from, and it keeps me close to people who are overlooked like I was." The room went silent with admiration. Within days, media outlets covered his story. The janitor who saved a mafia boss's son. The genius the system ignored. Medical racism exposed through quiet hero. Scholarship funds were created under Sam's name. Programs to identify overlooked talent were announced. Hospitals reviewed discriminatory hiring practices, and Sam became a symbol of hope. Not because he demanded it, but because he earned it. A heartwarming ending weeks later, Tommy, healthy, smiling, full of life, ran down the hallway towards Sam. "Mr. Sam, look, I'm strong now." Sam knelt, scooping the boy into a warm embrace. "I knew you would be, champ." Vinny stepped forward, placing a firm hand on Sam's shoulder. "You saved my boy. You saved my world. And I'll make damn sure the world never forgets you." Sam smiled quietly. "I don't need the world to remember me," he said. "I just need to keep helping where I can." And so he did, sweeping floors with pride, consulting doctors with authority, changing lives quietly, just the way he always dreamed. The janitor the world ignored became the healer the world needed. As the chaos of a night finally settled, the hospital staff gathered around Sam. Not as a janitor, but as the man who saved a life when no one else could. Vinny held Tommy close, tears in his eyes, whispering, "You gave me back, my boy. I'll never forget this." Sam didn't smile for fame or applause or headlines. That he smiled because a child was breathing. Because he proved that greatness isn't defined by titles, but by courage, compassion, and the willingness to speak up when it matters. If this story touched your heart, then don't forget, someone out there might need to hear it too. Back-end index pointing right. Like the video back-end index pointing right. Share it with someone who needs hope. Back-end index pointing right. And subscribe for more true, powerful stories like this one. Because heroes walk among us. Sometimes in uniforms we never notice.